The sound of my father's hand connecting with my cheek echoed through the restaurant like a gunshot. 50 guests at my engagement party went silent. My fiancé Marcus stood frozen, his champagne glass halfway to his lips. And all I could think was, this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. "You selfish, ungrateful girl," my father hissed, his face red with rage. "Your brother is dying, and you care more about some fancy wedding than your own family." But here's the thing nobody knew that night, including me. The real reason my brother Jake needed that money had nothing to do with what my father told me. And when I finally learned the truth 3 months later, it destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family. My name is Isabella, I'm 26, and this is the story of how one slap changed my life forever. Let me take you back to the beginning. I've always been the responsible one in my family. While my older brother Jake was partying through college and bouncing between jobs, I was working 2 jobs to put myself through nursing school. While he was asking my parents for money every month, I was saving every penny I could. You see, ever since I was little, I dreamed of having a perfect wedding. Not because I was obsessed with being a princess for a day, but because I wanted something beautiful that was completely mine. Growing up, everything in our house revolved around Jake, his problems, his needs, his drama. I learned early that if I wanted something, I had to work for it myself. So for 8 years, I saved. Every birthday check from grandparents, every overtime shift at the hospital, every tax refund, it all went into what I called my dream fund. By the time Marcus proposed last spring, I had saved exactly $50,000. It wasn't just money to me, it was proof that I could build something beautiful through hard work and determination. Marcus and I met at the hospital where I work. He's a physical therapist, and we bonded over our shared love of helping people heal. He's steady, kind, and everything my chaotic family isn't. When he proposed on the beach at sunset, I finally felt like my real life was beginning. But I should have known my family wouldn't let me have this moment in peace. The problem started about 2 months after our engagement. Jake had been living in Los Angeles, supposedly working as a freelance graphic designer. But suddenly, he was calling my parents every day, usually late at night, and the conversations always ended with my mom crying. "He's just going through a rough patch," she'd tell me when I asked. "You know how competitive it is out there for creative types." I knew Jake had always been irresponsible with money, but this felt different. There was a desperation in my parents' voices that I'd never heard before. They started making comments about how expensive weddings were getting, how maybe Marcus and I should consider something smaller, more intimate. "You know, Isabella," my father said one Sunday after dinner, "some of the most beautiful weddings I've ever been to were simple backyard affairs. All that matters is the love between 2 people." This coming from the man who insisted on the most expensive country club in town for his 50th birthday party just 2 years earlier. I started to feel the pressure building. The guilt trips became more frequent and more direct. My mother would sigh dramatically while looking at wedding magazines I'd left on the coffee table. My father would make pointed comments about family loyalty and how we take care of our own. But I held firm. This wedding fund wasn't just money, it was my independence, my future, my reward for years of sacrifice. I'd already put deposits down on the venue, the photographer, the florist. Everything was planned for October, just 6 months away. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday evening in July. I was at Marcus's apartment, helping him meal prep for the week, when my phone rang. It was my mother, and she was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "Isabella, you need to come home right now. It's about Jake." My hand started shaking. "What happened? Is he okay?" He's sick, honey. Really sick. Your father will explain everything when you get here." The drive to my parents' house felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. I kept imagining the worst: car accident, drug overdose, cancer. Jake might have been irresponsible, but he was still my brother. The thought of losing him made me physically ill. When I walked into the living room, my parents were sitting on the couch, holding hands. My father's face was gray, and my mother's eyes were red and swollen from crying. "Sit down, Isabella," my father said quietly. "Just tell me what's wrong with Jake," I demanded, still standing. My father took a deep breath. "He has a rare blood disorder. It's aggressive. Without treatment, the doctors say he has maybe 6 months." The room started spinning. What kind of treatment? Why didn't anyone tell me he was sick? "He didn't want to worry you," my mother whispered. "He's been fighting this for months, trying different doctors, different treatments. But nothing's working. There's an experimental treatment," my father continued. "It's not covered by insurance, and it's expensive. Really expensive." I felt like I was watching this conversation happen to someone else. "How expensive?" $50,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. I sank into the armchair across from them, my mind reeling. "But there's hope," my mother said quickly. "If we can get him into this program, the doctors think he has a real chance." "A good chance?" I stared at them, understanding slowly dawning. "You want me to give him my wedding fund?" "We're not asking you to give up your wedding," my father said. "Just postpone it. Scale it back. Jake is your brother, Isabella. He needs this money to live. What about your retirement savings? What about the equity in the house?" "We've already spent most of our savings on his medical bills," my mother said. "The house is mortgaged to the hilt. We're tapped out." I felt trapped. How could I say no to saving my brother's life? How could I choose a wedding over my own family? But something didn't feel right. Jake had always been dramatic, always in crisis. And now, suddenly, he was dying and needed exactly the amount of money I'd saved for my wedding. "I need to talk to him," I said. "I need to hear this from Jake himself." My parents exchanged a look. "He's not taking calls right now," my father said. "The treatments make him very weak. Then I'll fly out there. I'll see him in person." "No," my mother said quickly. "He doesn't want anyone to see him like this. He's lost a lot of weight. His pride, you know." Everything in my gut was screaming that something was wrong, but how could I ignore the possibility that my brother was dying? "I need some time to think," I said finally. "There isn't much time," my father pressed. "The treatment program has a waiting list. If we can't get the money together by next week, he'll lose his spot." I left their house that night feeling like I was drowning. Marcus tried to comfort me, but I could see the worry in his eyes too. We'd already sent out save the dates, booked the honeymoon, ordered my dress. But what if Jake really was dying? What if I let my brother die because I was too selfish to postpone my wedding? I spent the next 3 days in agony, going back and forth. I called Jake's phone dozens of times, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried to research the treatment my parents mentioned, but the details they'd given me were too vague to find anything concrete. Finally, I made my decision. I would give Jake the money, but I wanted transparency. I wanted to see the medical records, talk to the doctors, understand exactly what we were dealing with. That's when everything fell apart. The engagement party was supposed to be a small celebration, just family and close friends at Marcus's parents' favorite restaurant. I'd been dreading it all week, knowing I'd have to tell everyone about the wedding postponement. I planned to pull my parents aside before the dinner started and tell them I'd made my decision. I would help Jake, but I needed full transparency about his condition and treatment. But my father had other plans. We were about 20 minutes into the cocktail hour when he stood up and clinked his glass, calling for everyone's attention. I thought he was going to give a toast, but instead, he launched into what I can only describe as a public intervention. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate Isabella and Marcus, he began, his voice carrying across the room. But I also want to talk about the importance of family, and how we support each other in times of crisis. My stomach dropped. He wasn't going to do this here, in front of everyone. Most of you know my son Jake, Isabella's brother. What you might not know is that Jake is fighting for his life right now. He has a rare blood disorder, and without immediate treatment, he could die. Gasps rippled through the room. My future mother-in-law clutched her chest. My college roommate Sarah started crying. The treatment that could save his life costs $50,000, my father continued, his voice getting louder. Now, I'm not a wealthy man, but I've always believed that family comes first. Family before everything else. I could feel every eye in the room on me. My face was burning with humiliation and rage. He was manipulating me, using my brother's supposed illness as a weapon, and he was doing it in front of everyone we cared about. Dad, stop, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But he wasn't finished. Isabella has been blessed with the ability to save her brother's life. She has money saved for her wedding, money that could mean the difference between life and death for Jake. That's enough, I said, standing up. My legs felt shaky, but I was done being quiet. All I'm asking, my father continued, ignoring me, is for my daughter to remember what really matters. A wedding is one day, but family is forever. The room was dead silent. I could feel the weight of everyone's expectations, their judgment. To them, I was the selfish sister who cared more about her wedding than her dying brother. I said that's enough. I shouted, my voice cracking with emotion. You don't get to do this. You don't get to ambush me at my own engagement party and make me look like a monster in front of everyone I love. Isabella, please, my mother whispered, reaching for my arm. I jerked away from her. No. I'm done. I'm done with the guilt trips, I'm done with the manipulation, and I'm done with the lies. Lies? My father's face went red. Your brother is dying, and you're calling it lies. I've been trying to get in touch with Jake for days, I said, my voice getting stronger. I've been trying to research this treatment, these doctors, this whole situation. And nothing adds up. Nothing. How dare you question? How dare I question? I interrupted. How dare you use my brother's supposed illness to manipulate me? How dare you try to shame me in front of everyone I love? That's when my father lost it completely. You selfish, ungrateful girl, he snarled, stepping toward me. I raised you, I fed you, I put a roof over your head, and this is how you repay me. Your brother is dying, and you care more about some fancy wedding than your own family. I worked for that money, I said, my voice shaking with rage. I saved every penny for 8 years. I earned it. You earned it with family support, he shot back. You think you did it all alone? Who drove you to work when your car broke down? Who helped you with college applications? Who? I paid for my own college, I said. I paid for my own car. I paid for everything myself because you two were too busy bailing Jake out of his problems to help me with anything. That's not true, my mother said, but her voice was weak. It is true, I said. Jake totaled his car in college, and you bought him a new one. Jake lost his security deposit on 3 different apartments, and you covered it every time. Jake needed money for this or that, and you never said no. But when I needed help with textbooks or gas money, suddenly we were too broke to help. The room was electric with tension. I could see Marcus standing by the bar, looking like he wanted to disappear. My future in-laws were staring at their plates, clearly uncomfortable. My friends were frozen, unsure whether to intervene or pretend they weren't witnessing this family meltdown. I will not give him my wedding fund, I said, my voice clear and strong. Not until I see medical records, not until I talk to his doctors, not until I understand what's really going on. That's when my father snapped. "You heartless bitch," he said, and before I could react, his hand was flying toward my face. The slap was sharp and loud, echoing through the restaurant like a gunshot. The room went dead silent. I stood there, my hand pressed to my burning cheek, staring at my father in shock. I had never seen him look so angry, so out of control. His face was purple with rage, his hands shaking. For a moment, I was genuinely afraid of him. "Get out," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my sight. You're no daughter of mine." I looked around the room at all the faces staring back at me, some shocked, some pitying, some judgmental. These people, my family and friends, had just watched my father physically assault me for refusing to give up my life savings. "Fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "But when the truth comes out, and it will come out, remember this moment. Remember that you chose his lies over my right to make my own decisions." I grabbed my purse and walked out of the restaurant, my head held high. Marcus followed me, but I couldn't even look at him. I was too humiliated, too angry, too heartbroken. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to Los Angeles to see Jake for myself, with or without my parents' permission. I flew to Los Angeles the next morning, using my emergency credit card to book a last-minute flight. Marcus begged me to let him come with me, but I needed to do this alone. I needed to see my brother with my own eyes and hear the truth from his own mouth. I knew where Jake lived, a small apartment in Hollywood that he'd been renting for the past 2 years. I'd never visited, but I'd sent him birthday cards there. I just showed up, figuring that if he was as sick as my parents claimed, he'd be home. The building was run down, with peeling paint and a broken intercom system. I walked up 3 flights of stairs to apartment 3B and knocked on the door. "Jake. It's Isabella. I need to talk to you." I heard movement inside, then nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. "Jake, I know you're in there. Open the door." Finally, the door opened, and I saw my brother for the first time in over a year. He looked normal. Healthy, even. He'd gained weight if anything, and his color was good. This was not a man dying of a blood disorder. "Isabella." He looked genuinely surprised to see me. "What are you doing here? Can I come in?" He hesitated, then stepped aside. The apartment was small but clean, with expensive-looking electronics and what appeared to be a brand-new gaming setup in the corner. "Nice place," I said, looking around. "For someone who's supposedly dying." Jake's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Cut the crap, Jake. I know about the blood disorder. I know about the experimental treatment. I know about the $50,000 you need." He stared at me for a long moment, then sank down onto his couch, his head in his hands. "Shit," he whispered. "They told you. They told me you were dying," I said. "They told me you needed my wedding fund to save your life. Dad slapped me at my engagement party when I asked too many questions." Jake looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my brother's eyes before, genuine shame. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said quietly. "What did you never mean to go this far?" He was quiet for a long time, and I just waited. Finally, he started talking. "I'm in trouble, Isabella. Real trouble. But not the kind they told you about." "What kind of trouble?" "I owe money to some people. Bad people. And if I don't pay them back soon, they're going to hurt me. Maybe kill me." My heart sank. "Gambling?" He shook his head. "Worse. I got involved with some guys who were moving drugs. I was just supposed to help with the computer stuff, setting up encrypted communications, managing accounts. Easy money, you know. I felt sick. Jake, no. I didn't know how deep it went at first, he continued. But then I found out they were trafficking more than just drugs. They were moving people. Kids, Isabella. Little kids. I sat down heavily in the chair across from him. Oh my God. I tried to get out, but they said I knew too much. They said the only way out was to pay them $50,000, basically insurance that I'd keep my mouth shut and disappear. So you told Mom and Dad you were dying. I panicked, he said. I was going to tell them the truth, but then I thought about how disappointed they'd be. How ashamed. So I made up the blood disorder thing, thinking I could just borrow the money and pay them back somehow. You were going to steal my wedding fund to pay off drug traffickers who hurt children. I know how it sounds, he said quickly. But I was desperate. These people, they showed me pictures of what they do to people who cross them. I was scared, Isabella. I'm still scared. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and saw him clearly for the first time in years. He wasn't the charming, irresponsible kid who just needed help getting his life together. He was a grown man who had made choice after choice that led him deeper into dangerous territory, and he was willing to destroy his family to save himself. You let Dad hit me, I said quietly. You let him call me selfish and heartless, and you said nothing. I didn't know he was going to do that, Jake said. I never wanted anyone to get hurt. But you were okay with me giving up my wedding, my future, my dreams, to clean up your mess. He didn't answer, which was answer enough. I stood up to leave, but Jake grabbed my arm. Isabella, please. I need help. I don't know what else to do. I looked down at him, this man who had been the center of my family's universe for so long, and I felt something I'd never felt before, complete indifference. You need to tell Mom and Dad the truth, I said. All of it. And then you need to go to the police. I can't do that. These people will kill me. Then you need to disappear. Change your name, move across the country, start over. But I'm not giving you my money, and I'm not keeping your secrets anymore. What about family loyalty? He asked desperately. What about taking care of each other? I pulled my arm free and headed for the door. Family loyalty goes both ways, Jake. You should have thought about that before you decided to lie to everyone who loves you. The flight back to Chicago was the longest 5 hours of my life. I kept replaying the conversation with Jake, trying to process everything I'd learned. My brother wasn't just irresponsible, he was involved with people who trafficked children. He was willing to let our father assault me rather than tell the truth about his situation. But as angry as I was at Jake, I was even angrier at my parents. They had taken his word without question, just like they always did. They had been willing to guilt, shame, and manipulate me into giving up my dreams for his lies. When I got home, I found 17 missed calls from my mother and 12 from my father. There were also messages from various relatives who had apparently heard about the engagement party incident. Some were supportive, but others were clearly on my parents' side, lecturing me about family obligations and suggesting I was being selfish. I ignored them all and went straight to Marcus's apartment. I needed to tell someone the truth, and I needed to figure out what to do next. Marcus listened to the whole story without interruption, his face growing more and more concerned as I talked. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. I'm so sorry, he said finally. I can't believe they put you through that. I don't know what to do, I admitted. Do I tell them what I learned? Do I just cut contact? Do I try to help Jake anyway? What do you want to do? It was such a simple question, but it hit me like a revelation. For the first time in my life, someone was asking me what I wanted, not what I owed someone else or what my obligations were. I want to have our wedding, I said. I want to marry you in October like we planned. I want to use the money I saved for the celebration I dreamed of. And I want to stop setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. Marcus smiled and pulled me into his arms. Then that's what we'll do. But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. I had to face my parents eventually, and I had to decide how much of the truth to tell them. The next morning, I called my mother and asked her to meet me for coffee. I decided to tell her everything, about Jake's real situation, about the lies, about why I wasn't giving him the money. My mother arrived looking haggard and worried. She'd clearly been crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Isabella, honey, I'm so sorry about what happened at the restaurant," she said before I could even sit down. "Your father feels terrible about losing his temper. He's been so stressed about Jake." "Mom, stop," I said. "I need to tell you something about Jake, and I need you to listen." I told her everything. About my trip to Los Angeles, about the drug trafficking, about the lies. I watched her face go through a range of emotions, disbelief, shock, horror, and finally, a kind of broken recognition. "He's done this before," she said quietly when I finished. "What do you mean?" "The lying. The manipulation. Remember when he said he needed money for medical bills after that car accident in college? There was no car accident. He'd been gambling and lost his rent money." I stared at her. "You knew he was lying." "I suspected. But your father always believed him. Always made excuses for him." She was crying now. I thought maybe this time was different. The way he sounded on the phone, so scared and desperate. "He was scared and desperate," I said. "Just not for the reasons he told you." We sat in silence for a while, both of us processing the weight of Jake's deception and our family's dysfunction. "What happens now?" my mother asked finally. "Now Jake has to face the consequences of his choices," I said. "And you and Dad have to decide whether you're going to keep enabling him or start holding him accountable." "What about you? Are you going to help him?" I thought about it for a moment. "I'll help him get into witness protection if he goes to the police. I'll help him find a therapist or a treatment program. But I won't give him money to pay off criminals, and I won't sacrifice my future for his mistakes." My mother nodded slowly. I think I understand. I'm sorry, Isabella. I'm sorry we put you in this position." "What about Dad?" She sighed. "Your father is going to have a harder time accepting this. Jake has always been his golden boy. But he needs to know the truth." That evening, my mother called a family meeting at their house. She told my father that I had important information about Jake, but she hadn't given him the details. I could tell he was still angry with me when I walked in. His greeting was cold and his body language was defensive. "I hope you've come to your senses," he said before I could even sit down. "Jake called this morning. He sounded terrible." "He's getting worse, Isabella." "Dad, I need to tell you something about Jake's phone call," I said. "And I need you to listen to the whole story before you react. I don't want to hear any more of your excuses." "She went to Los Angeles," my mother interrupted. "She saw him." My father's face went white. "What?" I told him everything, just like I told my mother. I watched him go through the same range of emotions, but his ended in anger rather than acceptance. "You're lying," he said when I finished. "You're making this up because you don't want to help your brother." "Why would I make up something like this?" "Because you're selfish," he said. "Because you care more about your wedding than your family." "Then call him," I said, pulling out my phone. "Call Jake right now and ask him to tell you the truth." My father stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed the phone and dialed Jake's number. He put it on speaker so we could all hear. "Dad?" Jake's voice came through the speaker, weak and shaky. "Jake, Isabella is here. She's telling us some crazy story about drug dealers and trafficking. Tell her she's wrong. Tell her about your blood disorder." There was a long pause. Then Jake started crying. "I can't do this anymore, Dad. I can't keep lying to you." My father's face crumpled as Jake told him the truth, all of it. About the drugs, the trafficking, the threats, the lies. My mother reached over and took my father's hand as our family's entire understanding of reality shifted. When Jake finished talking, my father was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Why didn't you tell us the truth?" "Because I was ashamed," Jake said. "Because I knew you'd be disappointed. Because I thought I could handle it myself. So you lied to us. You made us believe you were dying. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry." My father looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, genuine remorse. "Isabella," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. A big one. Yes, you do. I was wrong. About everything. About hitting you, about the things I said, about taking his word without question." He paused. "I've been a terrible father to you. You've been an enabler," I said. "To him and to yourself." "What do we do now?" my mother asked. I looked at both of them, these people who had raised me but had never really seen me, and I felt something shift inside me. "Now you decide what kind of parents you want to be going forward," I said. "And I decide what kind of relationship I want to have with you." Resolution 52:00-57:00. The next few months were difficult, but they were also transformative. Jake did eventually go to the police, and he entered witness protection after providing testimony about the trafficking ring. The last I heard, he was living in a small town in Montana, working at a hardware store and going to AA meetings. My parents went to family therapy, both together and individually. It was a long process, but they slowly started to recognize the patterns they'd fallen into with Jake and with me. My father, in particular, had to confront some hard truths about his own childhood and the way he'd been raised to show love through rescue rather than accountability. As for me, I learned to set boundaries. I stopped taking responsibility for other people's emotions and choices. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep others warm. Marcus and I had our wedding in October, exactly as planned. It was everything I'd dreamed of, elegant, joyful, and completely ours. My parents were there, and they were genuinely happy for us. My father even gave a speech about how proud he was of the strong, independent woman I'd become. "Isabella taught me that love isn't about rescuing people from their problems," he said. "It's about believing in them enough to let them face their consequences and grow from them." The wedding was beautiful, but what made it perfect was that it represented something bigger than just a party. It represented my right to prioritize my own happiness and dreams. It represented the beginning of a life where I was valued for who I was, not just what I could provide for others. It's been 2 years since that night at the restaurant, and our family looks completely different now. My parents have a healthy relationship with boundaries. They still worry about Jake, but they've learned to love him without enabling him. Jake is doing well in his new life. He's been sober for 18 months and is slowly rebuilding his relationship with all of us. As for me, I'm thriving. Marcus and I bought a house last year, and I was promoted to charge nurse at the hospital. We're talking about starting a family soon, and I know our children will grow up in a home where love is unconditional but boundaries are clear. The thing is, I don't regret keeping my wedding fund. I don't regret standing up to my father or refusing to enable my brother's lies. Because here's what I learned from that whole experience: sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to participate in someone else's dysfunction. Family loyalty isn't about sacrificing yourself for other people's mistakes. It's about loving people enough to tell them the truth, even when it's hard. It's about supporting people in their growth, not their destruction. And sometimes, It's about protecting your own dreams and boundaries, even when other people call you selfish for doing it. If you're in a similar situation, if you're being pressured to sacrifice your dreams for someone else's crisis, I want you to ask yourself this: are you being asked to help someone grow, or are you being asked to enable their avoidance of consequences? Because there's a difference between supporting someone through a genuine crisis and being manipulated into fixing problems that aren't yours to fix. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have given up your wedding fund? Would you have stood up to your family? Let me know in the comments below, because I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, you are not responsible for other people's choices, but you are responsible for your own. Choose wisely.